If you enjoy stories about redemption, hidden heroes, and the profound connections that change our lives, please take a second to subscribe to the channel and like this video. It helps us bring more narratives like this to you. 06 Bakon. The digital numbers on the alarm clock didn't just change. They felt like a command. Daniel Reeves opened his eyes precisely as the minute clicked over. There was no grogginess, no reaching for a snooze button, and absolutely no hesitation. His body, trained by 2 decades of high-stakes military service, woke up before his mind truly did. He sat up. The room was cool, temperature controlled to 68 degrees Fahrenheit, the optimal temperature for sleep hygiene, or so he had read in a manual somewhere. The sheets were gray, the walls were a slightly darker shade of gray, and the only splash of color in the room came from the faint amber glow of a street lamp filtering through the blackout curtains. Daniel swung his legs out of bed. His feet hit the hardwood floor. He stood, his spine straightening instinctively. He was 45 years old, but his body carried the wear and tear of a man who had lived 3 lifetimes. There were scars that mapped his history, white lines across his shoulders, a divot in his left thigh, and the invisible, heavier scars that sat behind his eyes. He made the bed. It wasn't a casual tossing of the duvet. It was a ritual. Corners tight, surface taut enough to bounce a quarter. It was the first task of the day, a small victory over chaos. Admiral McRaven had taught him that years ago. Make your bed, and you have accomplished the first task of the day. It will give you a small sense of pride and will encourage you to do another task and another. Daniel lived his life task by task. It was the only way he knew how to keep the noise in his head quiet. He walked to the kitchen. The house was a modern architectural piece of glass and steel, perched on a hill overlooking the city. It was beautiful, expensive, and completely devoid of personality. There were no photos on the mantel, no magnets on the fridge. It looked like a model home that was waiting for a family to move in, except Daniel had lived here for 3 years. He started the coffee machine. While it brewed, he drank 16 ounces of water. Hydration, caffeine, nutrients. He ate oatmeal, not because he enjoyed the taste, but because it was efficient fuel. He moved to the living room and sat in the single leather armchair that faced the large bay window. He didn't turn on the television. He didn't look at his phone. He simply sat, observing the perimeter of his property, watching the sun crest over the distant hills. This was the routine, Monday through Sunday, unchanging, except today was Friday. Fridays were different. Fridays meant the variable. At 08:55, Daniel usually unlocked the front deadbolt. At 9 Sir, Mrs. Alvarez would arrive. Mrs. Maria Alvarez. She was a woman of perhaps 60, short, with salt and pepper hair always pulled back in a severe bun that contradicted the softness of her eyes. She had been cleaning his house for the 3 years he had lived there. She was the only person Daniel spoke to on a regular basis who wasn't a cashier or a bank teller. Their conversations were brief, scripted by Daniel's awkwardness and Maria's professional respect. "Good morning, Mr. Daniel." "Morning, Mrs. Alvarez." "I made extra empanadas. I left 2 in the fridge." "You didn't have to do that." "You look thin. Eat." That was it. That was the extent of his social life. Daniel glanced at his watch. 08:58. He stood up and walked to the front door. He unlocked the deadbolt with a heavy thud. He retreated to his study, leaving the door ready for her He usually spent the morning reviewing his investment portfolio or reading military history while she cleaned. He tried to stay out of her way. He told himself it was out of politeness, but deep down, he knew it was because her presence, her humming while she dusted, the smell of the lemon cleaner she used, the warmth she brought into the sterile house, made him feel things he didn't want to feel. It made him feel lonely. He sat at his desk. He opened a book on the Peloponnesian War. He read the same paragraph 3 times. Ace on 905. Daniel frowned. He looked at the door of his study. It remained closed. Usually, by now, he would hear the front door open, the soft scuffling of her comfortable shoes on the entryway tile, and the clack of her setting her keys on the side table. Silence. He checked his watch again. 9:10. Mrs. Alvarez was never late. In 3 years, she had never been late. Not when it rained, not when the bus strike happened. She had walked 3 miles. Not when she had a cold. She was reliable. Reliability was a currency Daniel valued above gold. 9:20. The silence in the house began to change. It wasn't the peaceful silence of order anymore. It was the heavy, suffocating silence of something going wrong. Daniel felt a familiar prickle at the back of his neck. It was the sensation he used to get in the field when the birds stopped singing in the jungle, or when the wind shifted in a dusty alleyway. Something is wrong. He stood up and walked into the living room. The house was exactly as he had left it. Empty. He went to the front door. He opened it and looked out at the driveway. Empty. No sign of the beat-up Honda Civic her daughter sometimes dropped her off in. No sign of her walking up the steep driveway. He closed the door. He went to the kitchen, where he kept a small notebook with household contacts. Plumber, electrician, landscaper, housekeeper. He dialed the number listed next to Alvarez. It rang, and rang, and rang. The subscriber you have called is not available. Please leave a message after. Daniel hung up. He didn't leave voicemails. He didn't like talking to machines. He stood in the middle of his pristine kitchen, the stainless steel appliances reflecting his distorted image. A normal person might have shrugged. A normal person might have thought, she took a day off and forgot to tell me, or she's stuck in traffic. But Daniel Reeves was not a normal person. He was trained to analyze patterns and detect anomalies. Mrs. Alvarez not showing up was an anomaly. Mrs. Alvarez not answering her phone was a breach of protocol. He paced the length of the kitchen. 7 steps one way, 7 steps back. He realized then that he didn't know anything about her. He didn't know where she lived, other than the South Side. He didn't know if she had a husband. He knew she had a daughter because she had mentioned her once or twice, but he didn't know her name. He felt a sudden, sharp pang of guilt. It was a foreign emotion, sharp and jagged. This woman had washed his underwear, scrubbed his toilet, and left him food because she thought he looked thin. She had been the invisible infrastructure of his life for 95 days, and he didn't even know if she was married. He looked at the notebook again. There was no address listed, just the name and the phone number. Daniel closed his eyes and exhaled slowly. He had 2 choices. Choice A. Wait, assume she would call. Hire a service if she didn't show up next week. Maintain the perimeter. Stay safe. Choice B. Engage. He opened his eyes. He walked to the drawer where he kept his financial records. He pulled out a thick file folder marked Household expenses. He flipped through the pages, his fingers moving with the dexterity of a card shark. Receipts. Invoices. He found it. A scrap of paper from 3 years ago. The initial agreement. She had written her details down for him when he first hired her, before he set up the automatic bank transfer. Maria Alvarez, 422 Hickory Lane, Apt 4B. He stared at the handwriting. It was looped and careful, the handwriting of someone who took pride in clarity. Daniel folded the paper and put it in his pocket. He went to the hallway closet and grabbed his jacket. He checked his pockets, wallet, keys, pocket knife. The mission had changed. The objective was now locate and assess. He walked out the front door, locking it behind him. The silence of the house remained, but Daniel was no longer listening to it. The engine of Daniel's truck, a black, heavy-duty pickup that looked more like an assault vehicle than a commuter car, rumbled to life. The vibration hummed through the steering wheel, a sensation that usually grounded him. Today, it felt like urgency. He punched the address into the GPS, 422 Hickory Lane. The navigation system calculated the route, 25 minutes, 8 miles. But those 8 miles spanned a distance that couldn't be measured in distance alone. Daniel pulled out of his driveway, the tires crunching on the gravel. He lived in the Highlands, an area of the city known for gated communities, manicured lawns, and private security patrols. It was a place where people paid a premium for isolation. As he descended the winding roads, the scenery began to shift. The large oak trees and wrought iron fences gave way to strip malls and gas stations. The roads became rougher, the potholes more frequent. The sleek Teslas and BMWs were replaced by work vans and older sedans with mismatched bumpers. Daniel drove with tactical awareness. His eyes scanned the mirrors, the sidewalks, the intersections. He wasn't threatened by the neighborhood. He had operated in war zones where the very air wanted to kill him, but he was hyper-aware of not belonging. His truck was too clean. His clothes were too new. He was an invasive species in this ecosystem. He thought about Mrs. Alvarez. Why was he doing this? He asked himself the question again. Because she was late. That was the logical answer, but the emotional truth was buried deeper. He remembered a Tuesday last month. It had been the anniversary of the operation in Kandahar, the one that had ended his career and taken his best friend's life. Daniel had been sitting in his chair, staring at the wall, trapped in a memory loop, sweating, his hands shaking. Mrs. Alvarez had walked in to dust. She had seen him. She didn't gasp. She didn't ask what was wrong. She had simply walked over, placed a glass of water on the table next to him, and said, soft but firm, "Breathe, Mr. Daniel. The ground is under your feet. You are here." She had stood there until his breathing slowed. Then she went back to dusting. She never mentioned it again. She had anchored him. Now he needed to know if she was adrift. The GPS voice cut through his thoughts. Turn right on Hickory Lane. The neighborhood was dense. Apartment buildings made of brick and crumbling stucco lined the streets. Laundry hung from balconies like colorful flags. Children played soccer in a narrow alleyway, stopping to stare as Daniel's massive truck rolled slowly by. He found 422. It was a 4-story building that had seen better days. The beige paint was peeling, revealing gray concrete underneath. There was a small bodega on the ground floor with bars on the windows. Daniel parked the truck. He felt the eyes of the neighborhood on him. Two young men sitting on the stoop of the building watched him exit the vehicle. Daniel didn't look at them aggressively, but he didn't look away either. He carried himself with the specific, heavy gravity of a predator that isn't hunting but will bite if provoked. The young men shifted, looked down, and continued their conversation. He walked to the entrance. The buzzer panel was a mess of scratched names and missing buttons. He found 4B, Alvarez. He pressed the button. No answer. He pressed it again, holding it longer this time. Static crackled, but no voice came through. Daniel looked at the door. It was locked, but the frame was warped. He waited. A moment later, an elderly woman with a shopping cart exited the building. Daniel caught the door before it closed. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said. His voice was gravelly but polite. She looked at him suspiciously. He was tall, broad, and imposing. "I'm looking for Mrs. Alvarez. Maria, I work with her." The woman's face softened slightly at Maria's name. "Maria, she is a good woman. 4th floor." "Thank you." Daniel stepped inside. The lobby smelled of old cooking oil and floor wax. There was no elevator. He took the stairs, 2 at a time, his boots making heavy, rhythmic sounds on the concrete steps. 1st floor, 2nd floor, 3rd floor. His heart rate was steady, resting at 55 beats per minute, but his mind was racing. What would he find? Did she just quit? Did she find a better job? Or was it something else? 4th floor. He walked down the narrow hallway. The fluorescent light overhead flickered, casting strobe-like shadows on the walls. He found door 4B. He knocked. 3 sharp raps. Silence. He knocked again. "Mrs. Alvarez, it's Daniel Reeves." He heard movement inside. It wasn't the heavy, confident step of a soldier, nor the steady shuffle of Mrs. Alvarez. It was frantic, stumbling. The chain rattled. The lock turned. The door opened a crack. A young woman stood there. She looked to be in her early 20s. She had Maria's eyes, dark, expressive, deep, but currently they were rimmed with red, swollen from crying. Her hair was messy, pulled back in a hasty ponytail. She wore a stained oversized t-shirt and pajama pants. She looked at Daniel with confusion and fear. She saw a giant of a man, scars on his face, standing in her doorway. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I'm Daniel Reeves," he said, keeping his hands visible, palms open, a gesture of non-aggression. "Mrs. Alvarez works for me. She didn't come in today. She didn't call. I wanted to make sure she was all right." The young woman stared at him. The recognition dawned on her face, but it wasn't relief. It was a fresh wave of panic. "Oh, God," she whispered. "You're the boss, the Navy guy." "Yes," Daniel said. She put a hand to her mouth, tears instantly welling up again. "I'm so sorry. I forgot to call. I didn't know the number. Please don't fire her. We need the money. I'll come do the cleaning. I can come right now. Just give me 5 minutes to get dressed." She was speaking a mile a minute, the words tumbling out over each other in a chaotic stream of desperation. She tried to open the door wider, as if to show him she was ready to work. "Whoa, slow down," Daniel said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming the command voice he used to calm panicked rookies. "I'm not here to fire anyone. Where is Maria?" The question hung in the air. The young woman froze. She leaned against the doorframe, her energy suddenly draining away. "She's not here," the girl said, her voice breaking. "Where is she?" Daniel asked gently. "She's at St. Jude's Hospital," the girl sobbed, covering her face with her hands. "She had a stroke last night. They don't know if she's going to wake up." The words hit Daniel like a physical blow. Stroke. Maria Alvarez was vitality personified. She was constant motion. The idea of her lying still, trapped in her own body, seemed impossible. The girl, Maria's daughter, was shaking. She looked like she was about to collapse. Daniel's training kicked in. When a civilian is in shock, you take control, you provide structure. "What is your name?" Daniel asked. "Sophia," she managed to say. "Okay, Sophia, listen to me. I need you to breathe." She looked at him, surprised by the sudden shift in his tone. It wasn't pity. It was instruction. I can't," she stammered. "I have to go to work. I have a shift at the diner in an hour. If I miss it, I lose the job. But I can't leave her alone at the hospital. But if I lose the job, we can't pay rent. And now she can't work." She was spiraling. The logic of poverty was crushing her. It was a tactical situation where every option led to a casualty. Daniel stepped closer, but not too close. "Sophia, stop." The command was sharp enough to cut through her panic. She fell silent, looking at him. "You are not going to work today," Daniel said. "I have to." "You are not going to work," he repeated. "I am going to drive us to St. Jude's. Do you have a bag packed for her, or for you?" "No, I just came back to shower. I've been there all night." "Go get your things. Get your ID. Get your phone charger. Get anything your mother might need. Do you have keys?" "Yes." "Get them. I'll wait here." Sophia stood there for a second, processing the fact that this stranger, this terrifyingly intense man her mother spoke about, was giving her orders in her own hallway. But she was too exhausted to fight. She needed someone to tell her what to do. "Okay," she whispered. She turned and ran back into the apartment. Daniel remained in the hallway. He didn't cross the threshold. He stood guard. He looked around the hallway. He saw the peeling paint, the dim light. This was where Maria returned to every day after making his glass and steel fortress perfect. The contrast made his stomach churn with that acidic guilt again. Sophia returned 2 minutes later. She had changed into jeans and a sweatshirt. She carried a canvas tote bag. "I'm ready," she said. "Let's go." They walked down the stairs in silence. When they reached the street, Sophia stopped when she saw his truck. "That's yours?" she asked. "Yes." He opened the passenger door for her. She climbed in, looking small against the black leather seat. Daniel got in the driver's side. The cab was silent, insulated from the noise of the street. "St. Jude's is downtown," Sophia said. "The traffic is going to be bad." "We'll be fine," Daniel said. He put the truck in gear. As they merged into traffic, Daniel glanced at Sophia. She was twisting the strap of her bag around her fingers, her knuckles white. "Talk to me," Daniel said. "What happened exactly?" Sophia took a shaky breath. "She was fine yesterday. She came home from your house. She was happy. She said you left a book out on the table and she moved it, and she hoped you wouldn't be mad." Daniel gripped the steering wheel. He remembered the book. He hadn't even noticed it had been moved. "She made dinner," Sophia continued. "We were watching TV. Then she just dropped her fork. She tried to pick it up, but her hand wouldn't work. Then she tried to speak, and it was just slurring. Her face, half of it just slid down." Sophia started crying again, silent tears tracking down her cheeks. "I called 911. It took them 20 minutes to come. 20 minutes. Daniel's jaw tightened. In his neighborhood, the ambulance would have been there in 5. They took her to the ER. They did a scan. A bleed in the brain. Hemorrhagic stroke. They operated to relieve the pressure. Now She's in the ICU. They said the next 24 hours are critical. Is she conscious? No. Coma. Daniel nodded. He needed the facts. Facts he could work with. Emotions were useless right now. Does she have insurance? Daniel asked. It was a blunt question, but a necessary one. Sophia laughed, a brittle, harsh sound. Insurance? Mr. Reeves, she cleans houses. I wait tables. We have Medicaid, but the doctors, they look at us differently. They look at the insurance card first, and the patient second. Daniel felt a heat rising in his chest. It was anger. Cold, directed anger. He knew that look. He had seen it in the bureaucracy of the VA. But this was worse. This was active triage based on economics. They won't look at her that way anymore, Daniel said. Sophia looked at him. What do you mean? I mean, I'm on the extraction team now, Daniel said, a phrase that made no sense to her, but meant everything to him. He merged onto the highway, pressing the accelerator. The engine roared. Daniel Reeves was going to war. His enemy wasn't a terrorist cell or an insurgent group. His enemy was a broken healthcare system, bad luck, and the indifference of the universe toward a woman who deserved better. Mr. Reeves, Sophia said softly after a few minutes, why are you doing this? You're just her employer. Daniel kept his eyes on the road. The skyline of the city loomed ahead. The hospital, a gray block among the glass towers. Because, Daniel said, his voice low, she didn't leave me behind when I was drowning. I'm not leaving her behind now. Sophia frowned, not understanding. Daniel didn't elaborate. He didn't know how to explain that silence was the loudest noise in the world, and Maria Alvarez was the only one who knew how to turn down the volume. They arrived at the hospital. Daniel didn't look for a parking spot in the visitor lot blocks away. He pulled the massive truck right up to the emergency room entrance, into the zone marked ambulances only. You can't park here, Sophia said, panicked. They'll tow you. Daniel put the truck in park. He turned off the engine. He pulled a placard from his visor, a specialized military veteran permit that usually granted him leeway with law enforcement, and placed it on the dash. Let them try, Daniel said. Let's go get your mother. He opened the door and stepped out, the air of the hospital district smelling of antiseptic and exhaust fumes. Sophia scrambled out to follow him. Daniel walked toward the sliding glass doors with a stride that parted the crowd. He wasn't walking like a visitor. He was walking like a man inspecting his troops, and God help anyone who wasn't doing their job. The automatic doors of St. Jude's Hospital slid open with a hiss of compressed air, admitting Daniel and Sophia into the sterile purgatory of the waiting area. The atmosphere was a thick soup of anxiety, cheap coffee, and the unique, sharp scent of industrial disinfectant that never quite masks the smell of human sickness. Daniel stopped just inside the threshold, his eyes scanning the room. It was a habit he couldn't break, checking the corners, assessing the exits, reading the baseline energy of the environment. The room was crowded. People slumped in vinyl chairs, clutching forms on clipboards, staring at their phones or at the muted television mounted on the wall. Sophia looked lost. The fluorescent lights washed out what little color remained in her face. She hugged her canvas bag to her chest like a shield. Where is she? Daniel asked, his voice cutting through the low murmur of the room. Third floor. ICU. But they wouldn't let me back in earlier. They said it was restricted to immediate family only during visiting hours, and visiting hours don't start until 10. Daniel checked his watch. 09:45. "Let's go," Daniel said. They bypassed the main reception desk, where a line of 5 people waited to speak to a harried receptionist. Daniel walked straight to the elevators. A security guard, a heavy-set man leaning against a pillar, straightened up as Daniel approached. He saw the way Daniel walked, the set of his shoulders, the focused intensity in his eyes. The guard instinctively stepped aside, giving a small nod. Real authority doesn't need to be announced. It vibrates. They rode the elevator in silence. When the doors opened on the 3rd floor, the air was quieter, heavier. The ICU was a different world from the chaos of the ER. Here, the battles were silent and desperate. They reached the nurses' station that guarded the double doors of the intensive care unit. A nurse sat behind the high counter, typing rapidly on a computer. She didn't look up. "Excuse me," Sophia said, her voice small. The nurse held up a finger. "One moment." Sophia shrank back. She was used to waiting. She was used to being told one moment by people in positions of power. She looked at the floor. Daniel stepped forward. He placed his hands on the counter, not aggressively, but with a solidity that demanded acknowledgement. He waited exactly 3 seconds. "Ma'am," Daniel said. His voice was a low rumble, projecting from his diaphragm. It wasn't loud, but it carried a frequency that commanded attention. The nurse stopped typing. She looked up, annoyed, adjusting her glasses. "Visiting hours start at—" "We are not visitors," Daniel interrupted, his tone even. "We are the support team for Maria Alvarez in bed 4. This is her daughter. I need a sit rep on her condition, and I need to speak to the attending physician." The nurse blinked. She looked from the large, scarred man to the trembling girl. "I can't just release information to—" "She is the next of kin," Daniel said, gesturing to Sophia. "She has been here all night without a clear update. That ends now. Is Mrs. Alvarez stable?" The nurse hesitated, then clicked a few keys on her keyboard. The shift in Daniel's demeanor, the use of military shorthand like "sit rep," the calm, unrelenting pressure, changed the dynamic. She wasn't dealing with a confused relative. She was dealing with someone who understood protocols. "She is stable, but critical," the nurse said, her tone softening slightly. "Dr. Evans is doing rounds. He'll be here shortly." "We will wait in her room," Daniel said. It wasn't a question. "I can only allow one person. She needs her daughter," Daniel said. "And her daughter needs support. We are going in." He held the nurse's gaze. It was a contest of wills. In the SEAL teams, Daniel had stared down warlords. A hospital policy on visitor limits was a minor obstacle. The nurse sighed, breaking eye contact. "Bed 4. Don't touch the equipment. If the alarms go off, step out immediately." "Understood." Daniel turned to Sophia and nodded toward the doors. "Move." Sophia followed him, her eyes wide. "How did you do that?" she whispered as they walked down the pristine hallway. "People respect boundaries," Daniel said quietly, "until you show them that your boundary is stronger than theirs." They found bed 4. The curtain was partially drawn. Daniel stopped outside, allowing Sophia to enter first. He heard her sharp intake of breath. He stepped in behind her. Maria Alvarez lay in the center of a nest of wires and tubes. The ventilator hissed rhythmically, a mechanical lung forcing life into her small body. Her face, usually so animated and warm, was slack, the left side drooping slightly even in repose. Her hands, which Daniel had only ever seen scrubbing, polishing or holding a cleaning rag, lay motionless on the stiff white sheets. She looked incredibly small. For the first time since the mission began, Daniel felt a crack in his armor. This woman was the constant in his life. She was the one who knew where his coffee mugs went. She was the one who knew he didn't like the blinds open in the afternoon. She was a fixture, as permanent as the walls of his house. Seeing her broken felt like a violation of the natural order. Sophia walked to the bedside. She didn't cry this time. She reached out and took her mother's hand, holding it with both of hers. She bowed her head, pressing her forehead against Maria's knuckles. "Mama," she whispered, "I'm here. I brought help." Daniel stood in the corner of the room, assuming the position of overwatch. He folded his arms, his back against the wall. He watched the monitors. Heart rate, 88. Blood pressure, 140/90. Oxygen saturation, 98%. He absorbed the data. 10 minutes later, the curtain was swept aside. A tall man in a white coat entered, looking exhausted. Dr. Evans. He stopped when he saw Daniel. He looked at Sophia, then back to Daniel. "Family?" the doctor asked. "Daughter," Daniel said, pointing to Sophia. "I'm a family friend." The doctor nodded and turned to Sophia. He pulled a stool over and sat down, dropping the air of superiority to get to eye level with her. "Sophia, right?" "Yes." "Okay, here is the situation. The bleed was significant. We managed to clip the aneurysm and drain the excess fluid. The pressure in her skull is decreasing, which is good. That's the first victory." "Will she wake up?" Sophia asked. "It's too early to tell," Dr. Evans said honestly. "The brain is resilient, but it takes time to heal. When we take her off the sedation, we'll know more about the extent of the damage. There may be paralysis on her left side. Speech might be affected. Cognitive function, we just don't know yet." Sophia nodded slowly, absorbing the blows. "But," the doctor continued, his voice hesitant, "we need to discuss the long term. Even if she wakes up, she will need weeks, maybe months of rehabilitation. She won't be able to live alone. She won't be able to work for a very long time." Sophia paled. "Months?" "Yes. And the rehab facility. Well, with Medicaid, the options are limited. There is a waiting list for the state facilities. We might have to move her to a subacute center once she is stable." Daniel pushed off the wall. "Subacute center? You mean a nursing home?" The doctor looked at Daniel. "Essentially, it's a matter of resources. St. Jude's is an acute care facility. We can't keep her here indefinitely." "She's not going to a nursing home," Daniel said. His voice was low, dangerous. "Mr. Reeves. And I want her on the list for the neurological recovery wing here. I saw the plaque in the lobby. You have one of the best rehab units in the state. That unit is private pay or enhanced insurance," the doctor said, looking uncomfortable. "It's extremely expensive." "Did I ask about the price?" Daniel asked. The room went silent. The ventilator hissed. "Shh, click, shh, click." "No," the doctor said slowly. "You didn't. Put her on the list," Daniel said. "Do whatever paperwork you need to do. If you need a billing address, I will give it to you. If you need a deposit, I will write a check. But she stays where she gets the best care. Is that clear?" The doctor looked at Daniel, assessing the man's seriousness. He saw the resolve. He saw the lack of bluff. "I'll speak to the case manager," the doctor said respectfully. "We'll get the paperwork started." When the doctor left, Sophia turned to Daniel. She was trembling again. "Mr. Reeves, you can't. That's thousands of dollars. Tens of thousands. I can't pay you back. I make $12 an hour plus tips." Daniel walked over to the bed. He looked down at Maria. "Sophia," he said, "do you know what your mother does for me?" Sophia wiped her eyes. "She cleans your house." "No," Daniel said. "That's what I pay her for. That's not what she does." He looked at Sophia. 3 years ago, I came back from a place where I saw things that broke me. I couldn't leave my house. I couldn't sleep. I sat in the dark with a gun on the table, wondering if it was worth it to keep going. Sophia gasped softly. "Your mother came in," Daniel continued. "She saw the gun. She didn't run. She didn't call the police. She put the gun in the drawer. She made me coffee. And she said, 'The war is over, Mr. Daniel. You are home now. The floor is dirty, and I have to clean it, so please move your feet.'" Daniel's eyes were slightly glossy, though no tears fell. "She gave me a routine. She gave me order. She saved my life, Sophia. A rehabilitation bill is cheap compared to what I owe her. The hours in a hospital dissolve into a strange, timeless gray. Morning turned to afternoon. The sun moved across the linoleum floor, highlighting the scuffs and scratches of 1,000 other tragedies that had played out in this room. Daniel didn't leave. He didn't check his phone. He sat in the stiff visitor's chair, his posture erect, keeping vigil. Sophia had finally calmed down. The adrenaline crash had hit her, and she was currently curled up in the recliner chair in the corner, drifting in and out of a restless sleep. Daniel watched Maria. He watched the rise and fall of her chest. He thought about the concept of value. In the SEAL teams, value was calculated by utility. A sniper was valuable because he could provide cover. A medic was valuable because he could stop the bleeding. But in the civilian world, value was often confused with net worth. Maria Alvarez had a net worth that was likely negligible. She lived in a crumbling apartment. She took the bus. But her value? Her value was immeasurable. Sophia stirred in the chair. She sat up, rubbing her face. She looked at Daniel, who was exactly where she had last seen him. "You haven't eaten?" she said, her voice raspy. "I'm fine," Daniel said. "I can go 72 hours without significant caloric intake before performance degrades." Sophia managed a weak smile. "You talk like a robot sometimes. Mama says that." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "She says I'm a robot?" "No," Sophia said, shifting in the chair to face him. She says you are a man who is holding his breath. That's how she describes it. She says, "Mr. Daniel is a good man, Sophia, but he is holding his breath because he thinks if he exhales, he will fall apart." Daniel looked down at his hands. The accuracy of the observation was unsettling. "She talks about you a lot," Sophia continued, the words flowing easier now in the quiet intimacy of the room. "She worries about you. She tells me he eats oatmeal every day. It is sad. A man needs flavor. That's why she leaves the empanadas." "I eat them," Daniel said softly. "They are very good." "She knows," Sophia said. "She checks the trash. If the wrapper is there, she comes home happy. She says, 'He ate today. He is okay.'" Daniel felt a lump in his throat. He had thought their relationship was transactional, employer and employee. He paid for a service. She provided it. He hadn't realized that while he was trying to be invisible, she had been truly seeing him. She had been monitoring his welfare with the subtle, pervasive care of a mother hen. "She told me something else," Sophia said, looking at her mother's sleeping face. Last Christmas, remember? Daniel nodded. He had given Maria a bonus, an envelope with $500 cash. He hadn't said Merry Christmas. He had just left it on the counter with a note that said, "For the holidays." She came home crying, Sophia said. Not because of the money. We needed the money, God knows. But she was crying because you signed the card. You wrote, "Thank you for the peace." Just that, "Thank you for the peace." Sophia looked at Daniel. She framed that card. It's on our dresser. She said it was the first time in 10 years she felt like she wasn't just a maid. She said, "I give him a clean house, but he told me I give him peace. That is a noble job, Sophia." Daniel stood up. He walked to the window and looked out at the parking lot below. He needed to look away because the emotion was rising too fast, threatening to breach the levee he had built around his heart. He had spent years thinking he was alone in his fortress, but he hadn't been alone. He had a guardian, a 60-year-old woman with a feather duster and a heart the size of a battalion. "I didn't know," Daniel whispered to the glass. "She didn't want you to know," Sophia said. "She respected your walls." She said, "Some men have wounds you cannot see. You must walk softly around them." Daniel turned back to the room. The mission parameters had shifted again. This wasn't just about paying a bill. This was about honoring a debt of the soul. Suddenly, Sophia's phone buzzed on the small table. The harsh vibration shattered the moment. She picked it up and looked at the screen. Her face fell. The panic returned instantly. "It's my manager," she whispered. "The diner. I was supposed to start my shift 20 minutes ago." She stared at the phone as if it were a bomb. "If I don't answer, he fires me. If I answer and say I'm not coming, he fires me." Daniel stepped forward. He held out his hand. "Give me the phone," he said. "What?" "No, I have to beg him." "Sophia," Daniel said, "give me the phone." She hesitated, then handed it to him. Daniel looked at the screen. Caller ID, Rick, diner manager. He pressed the green button and put the phone to his ear. "Where the hell are you, Alvarez?" a male voice barked on the other end. "It's Friday lunch rush. You think you can just no-show? You're done. Don't bother coming in for your tips." Daniel didn't raise his voice. He waited for the man to stop shouting. "Rick," Daniel said. His voice was calm, deep, and devoid of fear. There was a pause on the other end. "Who is this? Where's Sophia?" "This is Sophia's legal counsel." Daniel lied smoothly. "Sophia is currently dealing with a family medical emergency. She is unable to take your call." "Legal counsel? What are you talking about?" "Listen, buddy, she's a waitress. She misses a shift. She's out. That's the policy." "Rick," Daniel said, his tone hardening. "I am going to suggest a new policy. Sophia is taking a leave of absence for 1 week. Her job will be waiting for her when she returns. If it is not, or if her owed tips are withheld, I will make it my personal mission to bring the Department of Labor down on your establishment with the force of a hammer. I will audit your break schedules, your overtime pay, and your health code compliance. Do you understand?" Silence. The restaurant industry runs on thin margins and cut corners. Everyone has something to hide. Rick knew that. Daniel knew that. She needs to bring a doctor's note," Rick stammered, his bravado collapsing. "You'll have it by Monday," Daniel said. "She returns next Friday. Have a good lunch rush, Rick." Daniel hung up. He handed the phone back to Sophia. She was staring at him with her mouth slightly open. "Did you just threaten him?" "I negotiated terms," Daniel said. "You have a job next week. For now, you focus on the objective." "The objective?" "Her," Daniel pointed to Maria. "Recovery." But even as he said it, Daniel knew the logistics were more complex than just a job. Rent, food, the unseen friction of life. "Sophia," Daniel said, sitting back down, "we need to execute a logistical assessment. What bills are due in the next 7 days? What? Rent, utilities, phone. What is due? Rent is due on the 1st. That's Tuesday. It's 1,200. We don't have it. Mama's check from your house and the other 2 houses she cleans was supposed to cover it." Daniel pulled out his notebook, the small waterproof one he always carried. He clicked his pen. Rent, $1,200. Due date, Tuesday. Utilities? Electric is overdue. They sent a pink slip, $140. Electric, $140. Food. The fridge is mostly empty. I was going to shop after work. Daniel closed the notebook. Okay, threat assessment complete. He looked at Sophia. "I am going to step out for 1 hour. I need to secure the perimeter." "Where are you going?" Sophia asked, a sudden fear in her eyes that he was abandoning them. "I'm going to your apartment," Daniel said. "I need your keys." "Why?" "To get the pink slip, to check the fridge, to make sure the landlord doesn't post an eviction notice while you are sitting here." He paused. "And to feed the cat." Sophia blinked. "How did you know we have a cat?" "Mrs. Alvarez buys the senior formula cat food. I've seen the cans in her grocery bags when she arrives. And there is white hair on her black sweater sometimes." Sophia let out a small, wet laugh. "Mr. Tibbs. He's ancient." "I'll secure Mr. Tibbs," Daniel said. "Give me the keys." She handed them over. The trust was there now. He wasn't just a stranger. He was the man who stopped the nurse, silenced the manager, and noticed the cat hair. "I'll be back in 60 minutes, Daniel said. "Stay with her. Talk to her. The hearing is the last thing to go. Let her know she isn't alone." Daniel turned and walked out of the room. As he marched down the hallway, he felt a strange sensation. For the first time in 3 years, he wasn't just operating to survive. He wasn't just filling time until he died. He had a mission, and Daniel Reeves never failed a mission. But as he reached the elevator, his own phone rang. He checked it. It was a number he didn't recognize. "Reeves," he answered. "Mr. Reeves. This is the billing department at St. Jude's. Dr. Evans sent down a request for the neuro rehab wing. We need to verify the payment method. The deposit is $15,000 up front." Daniel didn't break stride. "I'll be there in 5 minutes with a card. Sir, we also need to let you know. The insurance company has already flagged the claim for the ICU stay. They are arguing that the aneurysm might have been a pre-existing condition. They might deny coverage for the surgery." Daniel stopped in front of the elevator doors. The metal reflected his face. Hard, scarred, determined. The enemy was engaging. Good. "Run the card for the rehab," Daniel said, "and tell the insurance company to call me. I'm ready for them." The drive to Sophia's apartment was a tactical maneuver. Daniel stopped at a grocery store first. He didn't browse. He executed. Cart, aisle 1, rice, beans, pasta, non-perishables. Aisle 4, canned tuna. Aisle
Soup.
9, cat food, high-quality wet food. Aisle 12, toilet paper, cleaning supplies. He wasn't shopping for a gourmet meal. He was stocking a bunker. He filled the cart with enough supplies to last 2 women a month. He paid, loaded the truck, and moved to the next objective. He arrived at 422 Hickory Lane. The neighborhood was livelier now. Music thumped from a car window. Kids were running on the sidewalk. Daniel parked. He carried 4 heavy bags of groceries up the 4 flights of stairs without breaking a sweat. He unlocked apartment 4B. The air inside was stale. It smelled of old wood and lavender. He stepped inside. It was a small apartment, a living room that doubled as a dining room, a tiny kitchenette, 2 bedrooms, but it was alive. Unlike his sterile glass box, this place screamed with life. There were photos everywhere. Maria and a young Sophia at a beach. Maria graduating from some ESL course. Sophia in a prom dress. Crosses and religious icons hung on the walls. Doilies covered the worn furniture. It was poor, yes, but it was a home. A fat white cat waddled out from the bedroom, meowing loudly. Mr. Tibbs. At ease, Daniel said to the cat. He unpacked the groceries. He filled the fridge. He filled the cupboards. He found the pink slip for the electric bill on the counter. He took a photo of it with his phone. He would pay it online from the truck. He found the rent notice taped to the fridge. Landlord, Mr. Gary. Phone number listed. Daniel called the number. Yeah? A gruff voice answered. Mr. Gary, this is Daniel Reeves. I am calling on behalf of Maria Alvarez in 4B. She late on rent? Because I told her? The rent will be paid today, Daniel said. In full, plus next month's rent, in advance. The landlord's tone shifted instantly. Oh, well, that's great. You can drop it off at... I will wire it, Daniel said. But I have a condition. Condition? The front door lock is flimsy, the hallway light on the 4th floor is out, and the buzzer system is broken. You will have a contractor there by Monday to fix all 3. Now wait a minute, I can't just... I am paying 2 months in advance, Daniel said. Cash flow is king, Mr. Gary. Do you want the money today, or do you want to argue about code violations? Monday, the landlord grunted. I'll have a guy there Monday. Good. Daniel hung up. He looked around the apartment one last time. He saw a small prayer book on the table next to Maria's chair. He picked it up. Inside, tucked in the pages, was a photo of him. It was from a newspaper clipping. Years ago. Local SEAL team returns. He was younger, looking at the camera with haunted eyes. Maria had cut it out and kept it. Underneath, in her handwriting, she had written, Rezando por él. Praying for him. Daniel felt a physical ache in his chest. He had spent years trying to forget who he was. She had spent years praying for who he was. He put the book in his pocket. He would bring it to the hospital. He fed Mr. Tibbs, checked the windows, and locked the door. When he got back to the truck, he sat for a moment. He checked his bank account on his phone. The $15,000 transfer to the hospital had gone through. It was a significant chunk of his savings. He wasn't a billionaire. He lived off a military pension and some smart investments he had made with his re-enlistment bonuses. This would hurt. He might have to sell the truck. He might have to cancel his gym membership. He looked at the steering wheel. Worth it, he said aloud to the empty cab. He started the engine. The sun was setting now, casting long shadows across the city. The first day of the battle was over, but the war for Maria's recovery was just beginning. He drove back toward the hospital, the city lights flickering on like distant stars. He wasn't Daniel Reeves, the broken soldier anymore. He was Daniel Reeves, the man who was needed. And for the first time in a long time, he felt awake. The waiting room of the ICU became Daniel's new forward operating base. He didn't go home to sleep. He slept in 20-minute intervals in the uncomfortable vinyl chair, waking up fully alert every time a nurse walked by. Sophia slept on his shoulder for a few hours, exhausted by grief. When she woke up, she apologized profusely, but Daniel just handed her a bottle of water and a protein bar he had bought from the vending machine. Eat, he said. Fuel. It was 48 hours before Maria opened her eyes. It happened at 03 Sue on Sunday morning. The hospital was quiet. The hum of the ventilation system, the only constant sound. Daniel was awake, reading the insurance policy documents he had downloaded on his phone, highlighting clauses about medical necessity. Sophia was dozing in the corner. A soft sound came from the bed, a rustle of sheets. Daniel was out of his chair in a millisecond. He moved to the bedside. Maria's eyes were open. They were glassy, unfocused at first, darting around the room in confusion. The tube had been removed from her throat earlier that day, replaced by an oxygen mask, but she still looked trapped. Her eyes found the ceiling, then the monitor. Then they found Daniel. Recognition flooded her gaze, and then immediate, crushing shame. She tried to lift her hand to cover her face, to hide her weakness from the man she served, but her left arm didn't move. She stared at it, willing it to lift, but it remained dead weight on the sheet. Panic flared in her eyes. The heart rate monitor began to beep faster. Beep, beep, beep. "Maria," Daniel said. His voice was incredibly soft, stripping away all the command and gravel. "It's okay. You are safe." She tried to speak. Her mouth moved, forming shapes, but the sounds that came out were garbled, thick, and unintelligible. Da. Ga. No. She looked terrified. Tears pooled in her eyes and spilled over, running into her ears. She tried again, straining, her face flushing with effort. I don't speak, Daniel said, reaching out. He hesitated for a fraction of a second. Physical touch wasn't his language, but then he took her good hand, the right one, and held it firmly. "You had a stroke. You are at St. Jude's. Sophia is here. I am here." Sophia woke up at the sound of the monitor. She rushed to the other side of the bed. "Mama." Maria looked at her daughter, and the tears flowed harder. It was a scene of raw, unfiltered vulnerability. The woman who was the pillar of strength, the provider, the one who never complained, was now helpless. Dr. Evans arrived minutes later, alerted by the nurses. He conducted a quick assessment. "Maria, squeeze my hand," he said. She squeezed with her right. Nothing with her left. "Can you smile for me?" The right side of her lip quirked up. The left side remained slack, creating a mask-like effect. The doctor turned to Daniel and Sophia outside the curtain a few minutes later. "She has Broca's aphasia," Dr. Evans explained. "The stroke affected the frontal lobe of the left hemisphere, which controls speech production. She knows what she wants to say. Her intellect is intact, but the connection to the mouth is broken. It's incredibly frustrating for the patient." "Will it come back?" Sophia asked, clutching her hands. "With intense speech therapy, yes, there can be significant improvement. But it's a marathon, not a sprint. And the hemiplegia, the paralysis on the left side, will require physical therapy. She is going to need 24-hour care for the foreseeable future." Sophia nodded, looking like she was about to vomit. The reality was setting in. The medical crisis was over. The life crisis was beginning. "Can she go home?" Sophia asked. "Not yet," the doctor said. "She needs the rehab unit. We're moving her there tomorrow thanks to Mr. Reeves's arrangement. But after that, she cannot go back to a fourth-floor walk-up. I saw her address on the file. That environment is impossible for her now." Daniel listened, his face impassive. He was already 3 steps ahead. "We focus on the rehab first," Daniel said, "one target at a time." When they went back in, Maria was staring at the wall. She looked small, defeated. Daniel walked up to the bed. He leaned down, so he was in her field of vision. "Mrs. Alvarez," he said formally. She looked at him, shame coloring her cheeks again. "You have cleaned my house for 3 years," Daniel said. "You have seen my dirty laundry. You have seen me on my worst days. You have seen me when I couldn't get off the couch." Maria's eyes widened slightly. "Now I see you," Daniel said, intense and low. "We are even. There is no shame here. Do you understand?" Maria stared at him. The panic in her eyes slowly receded, replaced by a profound gratitude. She squeezed his hand. Daniel squeezed back. It was a promise. The next week was a blur of logistics. Maria was moved to the neurorehabilitation wing, a place that looked less like a hospital and more like a high-end gym, albeit one filled with people relearning how to walk and talk. Daniel fell into a new routine. 06, wake up, in his truck in the parking lot, or occasionally at home to shower. 07, coffee for Sophia. 08, insurance calls. 12, bring lunch for Sophia and sit with Maria during her breaks. 14, more administrative battles. 18, dinner. The enemy was no longer a vague concept. It was Blue Cross administrators. On Tuesday, Daniel sat in the hospital cafeteria, his phone on speaker, a stack of papers spread out on the sticky table. "Sir, as I explained," the voice on the phone said. "A man named Kevin from Claims Adjustment. The policy clearly states that experimental rehabilitation is not covered under the standard plan. The facility you have placed her in is considered Tier 1 elective." "Kevin," Daniel said, his voice calm but tight. "I am looking at the policy. Paragraph 4, subsection C. Rehabilitation is covered if deemed medically necessary to restore basic life functions. Is walking a basic life function? Well, yes, but is speaking a basic life function? Sir, there are cheaper facilities. The state nursing home. The state nursing home has a patient-to-therapist ratio of 15:1. St. Jude's has 3:1. The window for neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself, is highest in the first 90 days. If we send her to a nursing home now, we are condemning her to permanent disability. If she stays here, she recovers. Which outcome is cheaper for your company in the long run, Kevin? Paying for 6 weeks of rehab now, or paying for lifetime disability care?" Silence on the line. Daniel was using logic, but he was also using the leverage of future cost. I don't have the authorization to override the denial," Kevin said, sounding tired. "Then transfer me to your supervisor," Daniel said. "I have time." He spent 4 hours on the phone. He climbed the ladder from Kevin to Sarah, manager, to Mr. Henderson, regional director. He didn't shout. He didn't curse. He simply refused to hang up. He quoted their own bylaws. He cited federal regulations regarding timely care. He was relentless. By 4 RPM, he had a compromise. The insurance would cover 60% of the stay. Daniel would cover the rest. It wasn't perfect, but it saved him $20,000. He hung up the phone and rubbed his temples. This was harder than combat. In combat, the enemy wore a uniform. Here, the enemy was a spreadsheet. He walked up to the rehab wing. He looked through the glass window of the therapy room. Maria was there. She was sitting at a table with a speech therapist. She was trying to pronounce the word water. Her face was contorted in concentration. She looked exhausted. Wa. Ter. The therapist smiled. Good. Again. Sophia was sitting in the corner, watching, cheering her on. Daniel watched them. He felt a strange sense of pride. Not the pride of a soldier, but the pride of a family member. No, he stopped that thought. He wasn't family. He was just the logistical support. But as he watched Maria struggle for a single syllable, he realized something. She was fighting harder than he had fought in years. He had given up on life, retreating to his glass house. She was fighting for every inch of her life back. He turned away, needing air. 2 weeks passed. The progress was slow but steady. Maria could say yes, no, water, and Sophia. She could stand with assistance. The paralysis in her leg was receding, but her arm was still stubborn. The discharge date was looming. Daniel drove Sophia back to the apartment one evening to pick up more clothes. "The doctor says she can come home in 10 days, Sophia said, staring out the window. She didn't sound happy. She sounded terrified. "That's good news," Daniel said. "Is it?" Sophia turned to him. "Have you seen the stairs, Daniel? 4 flights, 80 steps. There is no elevator. How am I supposed to get her up there? And once she is up there, she's a prisoner. She can't go down for appointments. She can't go outside." Daniel pulled up to the curb in front of 422 Hickory Lane. He killed the engine. He looked up at the peeling building. "We can carry her up," Daniel said. "And then what?" Sophia snapped, the stress finally breaking her composure. "I have to work. Who watches her? Who helps her to the bathroom? The bathroom door is too narrow for a walker. The bathtub has a high side. It's a death trap for her now." She put her head in her hands. "I looked at first-floor apartments. They are double the rent. We can't afford it. I looked at assisted living. The wait list is 6 months." She looked at Daniel, her eyes desperate. I think I have to quit my job and move us to a shelter that has disability access." "No," Daniel said immediately. "I don't have a choice," Sophia cried. "I can't carry her up those stairs every day." Daniel looked at the building. He looked at the narrow, dark entrance. She was right. Bringing Maria back here was setting her up to fail. It was dangerous. He looked at Sophia. She was 22 years old. She should be thinking about college or dates or her future. Instead, she was drowning in the responsibilities of a 50-year-old. "Let's go get the clothes," Daniel said quietly. He walked up the stairs with her. He counted them. 82 steps. They were steep, uneven concrete. He imagined Maria with her cane and her weak leg trying to navigate this. Impossible. They entered the apartment. It was hot and stuffy. Daniel stood in the center of the small living room while Sophia packed a suitcase. He looked around. This place had been Maria's sanctuary, but now it was her cage. He thought about his own house. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, single-story layout, mostly, wide hallways, a guest suite that he used for storage. He had lived there alone for 3 years. He guarded his privacy like a dragon guarding gold. The idea of letting anyone in, really letting them in, made his skin crawl. His house was his bunker, his safe space where he could have his nightmares in peace. But then he remembered the note. "Thank you for the peace." He remembered the empanadas. He remembered the gun he had put on the table and how she had gently put it away. He looked at Sophia, who was folding her mother's nightgowns with trembling hands. Daniel made a decision. It was a terrifying decision, harder than jumping out of a plane at 30,000 feet. "Sophia," he said. She looked up. "Pack everything," Daniel said. "What?" "Pack everything, not just clothes, photos, keepsakes, the cat." "I don't understand." "You aren't coming back here," Daniel said. His voice was steady, absolute, "and neither is she. Where are we going? Daniel took a deep breath. He was crossing a line of no return. He was breaking his own first rule. Never let the asset get too close. My house, Daniel said. Sophia dropped the shirt she was holding. Mr. Reeves, we can't. That's your home. We are the help. No, Daniel said firmly. You are the mission. My house has a guest wing. It has a walk-in shower. It has 0 steps from the driveway to the front door. It is secure. I can't accept that. It's charity. It's not charity, Daniel said, walking over to her. It's a tactical necessity. We need a base of operations that is safe. Your apartment is compromised. My house is available. You will pay rent if it makes you feel better. You can cook. You can help me. Organize. I don't care. He looked her in the eye. But Maria Alvarez is not going into a shelter. Not while I have breath in my body. Do we have an agreement? Sophia stared at him. She saw the iron resolve in his face. But she also saw something else. A desperate need to be useful. To save something. Because he hadn't been able to save his friends in the past. She wiped her eyes. You're crazy. You know that? I've been told, Daniel said. Now, where is the cat carrier? The move took 2 days. Daniel hired movers, another expense he ignored, to put their furniture in storage. He moved their personal items, the photos, the crucifixes, the doilies, into the guest wing of his pristine, sterile house. Suddenly, the gray walls had color. The silent hallways had the sound of Sophia playing music. The kitchen, which had only ever seen oatmeal and coffee, now smelled of spices Sophia was using to cook dinner. On the day of Maria's discharge, Daniel drove the truck to the hospital entrance. He went up to the room. Maria was sitting in a wheelchair, dressed in her normal clothes, clutching her purse. She looked nervous. Ready to go? Daniel asked. Maria nodded. Ria, D.I. He wheeled her out. They got to the truck. He lifted her easily, placing her in the passenger seat. When they drove up the winding roads to the Highlands, Maria looked confused. She pointed a shaky finger at the window. Wrong way. No, Daniel said. Right way. He pulled into his driveway. The gate opened. The massive glass house stood there, reflecting the sunset. Maria looked at Daniel, panic rising. No, work. No, clean. She thought he was bringing her to work. She thought he expected her to clean. Daniel put the truck in park. He turned to her. Maria, he said, you aren't here to work. You are here to heal. Sophia came out of the front door, smiling, tears in her eyes. Mr. Tibbs, the cat, was sitting in the window, looking thoroughly displeased, but safe. Daniel got out and walked around to Maria's door. He opened it. Welcome home, he said. He helped her into the wheelchair. He pushed her up the smooth concrete path, through the wide front door. For the first time in 3 years, the house didn't feel cold. That night, they sat on the patio. Sophia had made dinner. Maria was sitting in a comfortable chair with a blanket over her legs, watching the city lights below. Daniel sat nearby, drinking a coffee. Maria turned to him. She struggled to form the words. She pointed to herself, then to the house, then to him. Why? She managed to say. Why, me? Daniel looked at this woman, who had saved him without knowing it. He thought about the loneliness that had almost killed him. He thought about the purpose he had found in the last 3 weeks. Because, Daniel said, his voice thick with emotion. You showed up for me, Maria. Every Friday, you showed up. Maria smiled. It was crooked, but it was the most beautiful thing Daniel had ever seen. She reached out her good hand. Daniel took it. Femiralai, she whispered. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. Daniel looked at the horizon. The war inside him, the one that had been raging for years, finally felt like it was quieting down. Yes, Daniel said, family. The first month of living together was a tactical disruption of everything Daniel Reeves held sacred. His house, once a silent mausoleum of minimalism, was now an obstacle course of rehabilitation equipment. There were resistance bands draped over the dining chairs. There was a raised toilet seat in the guest bathroom. There was the constant, pervasive smell of healing, a mix of muscle ointment, chicken soup, and fresh laundry. Daniel, a man who had survived solitary confinement training, found himself overwhelmed by the sheer presence of other human beings. He would wake up at 05 orc, go to the kitchen for his water, and find Sophia already there, studying for her online classes Daniel had insisted she enroll in, arguing that waiting tables is not a strategic long-term deployment of your intelligence. Good morning, she would whisper, tired but smiling. Morning, Daniel would grunt, retreating to his study. But the real challenge was Maria. Maria Alvarez was not a woman who knew how to sit still. Her identity was forged in labor. She had worked every day since she was 14 years old. To sit in a chair, to watch Daniel, the man she was supposed to serve, vacuuming the rug or wiping down the counters, was a torture worse than the physical pain of her recovery. One Tuesday afternoon, Daniel came home from a meeting with his financial advisor to find a disaster in the kitchen. Maria was standing by the sink, leaning heavily on her cane. On the floor lay a shattered ceramic bowl and a puddle of soapy water. She was trembling, her good hand gripping the edge of the counter until her knuckles were white. She was crying, silent, angry tears of frustration. She had tried to wash the dishes. Her weak hand had failed her. The bowl had slipped. Daniel stopped in the doorway. He saw the shards. He saw the shame radiating off her. In the old days, before the stroke, she would have cleaned this up before he even noticed. Now, she was trapped in the wreckage of her good intentions. Daniel walked over. He didn't say a word. He didn't tell her, "I told you to rest." He didn't sigh. He knelt down. He picked up the large pieces of ceramic. He used a paper towel to soak up the water. Maria looked down at him. "Sor, rye, use less." The word hung in the air. Useless. Daniel stood up. He threw the trash away. Then he turned to her. "Do you know what Overwatch is, Maria?" he asked. She shook her head. "In the teams, when one man is moving, the other man watches his back. He covers the blind spots. He isn't better than the man moving. He is just the eyes." Daniel took a dish sponge. He handed it to her right hand. "You wash," Daniel said. "I'll dry and put away. I am your Overwatch. You are not useless. You are the point man. I'm just covering you." Maria looked at the sponge. Then she looked at the sink. Slowly, she turned on the water. She washed a plate. It took her a long time. She handed it to Daniel. He dried it and put it in the cupboard. They worked in silence for 20 minutes. They washed every dish in the house. By the end, Maria wasn't crying. She stood taller. She had completed a mission. That night, Daniel realized something that shifted the tectonic plates of his psyche. He had spent years thinking that strength was independence, that needing no one was the ultimate victory. But standing there, drying a plate that a recovering stroke victim had painstakingly washed, he felt stronger than he had in years. Strength wasn't being an island. Strength was being a bridge. 3 months passed. The seasons changed outside the glass walls, turning the green hills to a dry golden brown. Maria's speech was returning. It was slow, melodic, and deliberate. She had to think about every word before she launched it, which gave her sentences a weight and wisdom they hadn't had before. She walked with a cane now, taking laps around the living room, counting her steps in Spanish. But while Maria was healing, Daniel was facing his own ghosts. November brought the storms. In the highlands, the wind howled through the canyons, shaking the glass panes of the house like an angry spirit. The sound, a high-pitched whistling, was too similar to the sound of incoming mortars in the Korangal Valley. It was a Friday night. A massive low-pressure system slammed into the coast. The power flickered and died, plunging the house into darkness. Daniel was in the living room. When the lights went out, his mind fractured. He wasn't in California anymore. He was back in the sandbox. The wind was screaming. He couldn't see his team. His heart hammered against his ribs at 180 beats per minute. He backed into the corner of the room, sliding down the wall, gripping his knees. His breathing became ragged, hyperventilating. He closed his eyes, trying to find the reset button, but the panic was a tidal wave. Then, a light appeared. It wasn't a tactical strobe. It was the warm, flickering glow of a beeswax candle. Maria came into the room. She held the candle in her good hand. She walked slowly, her cane tapping rhythmically on the hardwood. Tap, step, tap, step. She found him in the corner. She didn't gasp. She didn't ask, "What's wrong?" She knew. She had seen the war in his eyes for 3 years. She set the candle on the low coffee table. She sat down on the floor next to him. It was a difficult maneuver for her, stiff and painful, but she did it. She sat shoulder to shoulder with him in the dark. She didn't try to hug him. She knew a soldier in that state might react instinctively to touch. She simply offered her presence. "Danny." She said softly. Her voice was the anchor. "Look at the flame." Daniel opened his eyes. He focused on the small dancing yellow flame of the candle. "Just a candle," Maria whispered. "Just wind. No bombs. Just wind." She started to hum. It was an old Spanish lullaby, something she must have sung to Sophia 1,000 times. The vibration of her humming traveled through her shoulder into his. It was a physical frequency that disrupted the chaos in his nervous system. Daniel's breathing slowed. The walls of the Korangal Valley faded, replaced by the gray drywall of his living room. He looked at Maria. The candlelight illuminated the deep lines of her face, the slight droop of her left eyelid, the fierce intelligence in her eyes. "I'm sorry," Daniel rasped. "Shh," Maria said. "No. Sore. Rye. Soul. Dyers. Need. Rest. Too." They sat there for an hour, until the storm passed and the backup generator finally kicked in. When the lights came back on, Daniel didn't move away. He stayed on the floor. "You should be resting your leg," Daniel said. Maria smiled. "My leg is fine. My heart is useful." That night, Daniel slept without nightmares for the first time in a decade. He realized that for 3 years, he had paid her to clean his house, but she had been trying to clean his soul all along. Now, finally, he had let her. 6 months later, it was Friday, 09 war. In the old life, this was the time the doorbell would ring. Daniel would be hiding in his study. Maria would enter with her key. Today, the routine was different. The front door opened, but it was Daniel walking in. He carried 4 large reusable grocery bags. He was wearing jeans and a t-shirt, not the tactical gear or the stiff button-downs he used to wear. He looked younger. The tension that used to live permanently in his jaw was gone. "I'm back," he called out. "Kitchen," Sophia yelled back. Daniel walked into the kitchen. It was bright and chaotic. Sophia was at the island chopping vegetables for a stew. She was wearing scrubs. She had started a nursing assistant program at the local community college, paid for by a scholarship that Daniel insisted existed, but which was funded entirely by his investment account. Maria was at the stove. She was stirring a pot with her left hand. It was shaky, but she was doing it. She was regaining motor control faster than the doctors had predicted. "Did you get the good coffee?" Maria asked. Her speech was almost fluent now, just a slight pause between complex words. "Colombian roast whole bean," Daniel said, setting the bags down. "And I got the empanada dough from the market downtown." Maria turned and smiled. It was a full smile now. The paralysis in her face had faded to a mere suggestion of asymmetry, giving her a look of permanent, skeptical amusement. "Good," she said. "You are learning." This was the new Friday. Daniel didn't hire a maid. He never would again. Instead, every Friday, he did the grocery run. He bought the supplies, and then the 3 of them cooked. They made a massive lunch. They sat at the dining table, the one Daniel used to eat oatmeal at while standing up. Now it was set with placemats. They ate. They talked. Sophia talked about her anatomy class. "The professor is a tyrant. He reminds me of you, Daniel." Daniel laughed. "He sounds like a good man, efficient." Maria tapped Daniel's hand. "Eat. You look thin." "I'm the same weight I've been for 20 years, Maria." "Thin," she insisted, putting another empanada on his plate. Daniel ate it. Later, after the dishes were done, a team effort, Daniel and Maria sat on the patio with their coffee. Daniel looked out over the city. He felt a profound sense of calm. It wasn't the numbness of suppression. It was the peace of connection. "I received a letter today," Daniel said. Maria looked at him. "From who?" "The VA. They offered me a contracting position. Training new recruits. Consultant work." Maria sipped her coffee. She watched him carefully. "Will you take it?" Daniel thought about it. He thought about the empty man who used to live here. He thought about the man who drove a truck through traffic to save a woman he barely knew. "I don't think so," Daniel said. "Why?" "Because I have a job," Daniel said. "I have a house to manage. I have a student to mentor." He nodded toward the window where Sophia was studying. "And I have a friend who needs me to drive her to physical therapy." Maria chuckled. "I can take the bus." "Not on my watch," Daniel said. 1 year later. The final scene isn't an explosion. It isn't a gunfight. It is a graduation. Sophia walked across the stage to receive her nursing assistant certificate. She scanned the crowd. In the sea of parents and families, she saw them. There was her mother, Maria, standing without a cane, clapping her hands high above her head, crying tears of pure joy. She looked vibrant, alive, her hair done, wearing a dress Daniel had bought her for the occasion. And next to her stood Daniel. He was wearing a suit. He stood tall, his shoulders broad, his presence commanding. But he wasn't scanning the perimeter for threats. He wasn't looking for the exit. He was holding up his phone, recording a video. He was smiling, a genuine, unguarded smile that reached his eyes. When Sophia came down from the stage, she ran to them. She hugged her mother first, burying her face in Maria's neck. Then she turned to Daniel. She hesitated for a second, then threw her arms around him. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything. You saved us." Daniel hugged her back, awkward but sincere. He looked over Sophia's shoulder at Maria. Maria was looking at him with that same look she had in the hospital bed, pure, unadulterated gratitude. But Daniel shook his head slightly. He leaned in and spoke so only they could hear. "You have it backwards, Sophia," Daniel said, his voice thick. "I didn't save you." He looked at the two women who had invaded his fortress and turned it into a home. The women who had taught him that a closed heart is just a slow way to die. You saved me. The educational takeaway. We often think of service as a grand gesture, a check written, a door kicked down, a life saved in dramatic fashion. Daniel Reeves spent his life thinking his value came from his ability to destroy the enemy. But the true lesson of his life didn't happen on a battlefield. It happened in a hospital waiting room and a kitchen filled with broken dishes. He learned that the highest form of service isn't about power. It's about presence. It's about the courage to let someone in when you are terrified of being seen. Maria saved Daniel not by cleaning his floors, but by witnessing his pain without judging it. Daniel saved Maria not by writing a check, but by becoming the family she needed when the world looked away. Service didn't end when Daniel took off the uniform. It just changed. It went from protecting the perimeter to opening the gate. And in the end, that was the harder mission, and the only one that truly brought him peace.